I'll see your million and raise you, Elvis Presley. 5 years, exclusive Vegas residency. Colonel Tom Parker pushed the contract across the green felt table, his hands trembling not from fear but from desperation. December 15, 1974, 4:23 a.m. The Duans Casino's private high-roller room. The Colonel was down $7 million to the Vegas mob, and he had one asset left to gamble, the king of rock and roll. But what nobody at that table knew was that Elvis was watching from a hidden camera feed in the next room, seeing his manager literally betting his life away. The most shocking part wasn't that Parker gambled Elvis, it's that he'd done it before, 3 times, and this 4th time Elvis had set him up, working with the FBI to finally destroy the man who'd been destroying him for 20 years. What happened in the next hour would end with handcuffs, but not on the wrists everyone expected. The smell of Cuban cigars and desperation filled the room. Colonel Tom Parker, not a colonel, not Tom Parker, but Andreas Cornelis van Kwijk, an illegal immigrant from Holland, sat at a table with men who collected debts in blood. $7 million in gambling debts. That's what 20 years of managing Elvis Presley had really produced. Not the fortune everyone assumed, but a hole so deep that Parker couldn't see daylight. Every dollar Elvis earned, Parker gambled, and lost, and borrowed, and lost again. But tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight Parker had a system. Tonight he'd win it all back. Instead, by 3 a.m. he was down another $1 million. "Colonel, you're tapped out," said Nick Civiletti, representing the Genovese family's Vegas interests. "Unless you got something else to wager." Parker's mind raced. He'd already mortgaged everything, sold future rights to Elvis's music, borrowed against tours that hadn't happened yet. There was only one thing left, Elvis himself. "I have a proposal," Parker said, pulling out a contract he'd carried for emergencies. A blank contract with Elvis's signature, obtained years ago for convenience. Parker could fill in any terms he wanted. Elvis Presley, 5 years exclusive Vegas residency, 300 shows a year. You own the casino, you own the shows, you own Elvis. The room went silent. Even these hardened criminals couldn't believe what they were hearing. "You're betting Elvis? Like he's a horse?" "He's better than a horse. He's a money machine. $50 million guaranteed over 5 years. What Parker didn't know was that Elvis was watching everything. 2 weeks earlier, Elvis had been approached by the FBI. They were investigating mob control of Vegas casinos and needed an inside source. They discovered Parker's real identity, illegal immigrant, possible murderer in Holland, definite fraud in America. They offered Elvis a deal, help them catch Parker and the mob, and they'd deport Parker instead of prosecuting Elvis for the drugs they knew about. Elvis agreed immediately. 20 years of being Parker's puppet was enough. The FBI had wired the private room. Elvis watched from a monitor in an adjacent suite, seeing his manager literally gambling away his life. But this time Elvis was ready. He'd planted that pre-signed contract, knowing Parker would use it. It was bait, and Parker had taken it. Back at the poker table, the stakes escalated. $1 million against 5 years of Elvis. Nick said, "1 hand, 5-card draw, winner takes all." Parker nodded. His hands shook as he picked up his cards. 2 pairs, 8s and 3s. Not great, but not terrible. He discarded 1 card, praying for a full house or 3 of a kind. The new card, a 7. Still 2 pairs. Weak. Nick smiled. "I'll take 2 cards." He discarded, drew, and his smile widened. "Colonel, I believe you work for me now. Or rather, Elvis does." Nick laid down his cards. Full house. Kings over 9s. Parker's face went white. He'd just lost Elvis Presley in a poker game. "Wait," Parker stammered. "Best 2 out of 3? "No, but I'll give you a chance to buy him back. Double or nothing. Your $7 million debt against 10 years of Elvis." Parker was trapped. If he said no, he lost Elvis for 5 years. If he said yes and lost, he lost Elvis for 10 years. But if he won— "Deal," Parker said. This time, Parker got lucky. 3 queens. Nick had 2 pairs. Parker won. "Again," Nick said. "Your debt's clear, but I want 1 more hand. This time for something different." Nick pulled out a document. "FBI investigation file on Andreas van Kwijk. That's you, isn't it, Colonel? Illegal immigrant, murder suspect in Holland, identity fraud in America." Parker's blood froze. "How did you—" "We know everything, Colonel. 1 hand. If you win, you get this file and your freedom. If I win, you sign this confession and work for us forever." Parker had no choice. His entire life was on that table. The cards were dealt. Parker looked at his hand. Royal flush. Impossible. Beautiful. Unbeatable. "I'll stand pat," Parker said, trying not to smile. Nick looked at his cards. Me too. They laid down their hands, Parker's royal flush against Nick's royal flush. Both hearts. Impossible. The deck was rigged. Seems we have a tie, Nick said. In Vegas, ties go to the house. You lose, Colonel. That's when the FBI burst in. FBI? Nobody move. Agents flooded the room, but they didn't arrest Nick or the mob figures. They arrested Colonel Parker. Andreas Van Kwijk, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, extortion, and violation of immigration law. Parker looked confused until Elvis walked in. The king wore a wire and a smile. Hello, Colonel. Or should I say Andreas? Bet you didn't see this hand coming. The truth unraveled quickly. Elvis had been working with the FBI for 2 weeks. Every conversation with Parker had been recorded, every illegal deal documented, but the poker game was the masterpiece. Parker literally selling Elvis into slavery, caught on camera. You set me up, Parker gasped. No, Colonel. You set yourself up. 20 years ago when you started stealing from me, when you took 50% instead of the standard 10%, when you gambled away my earnings, when you kept me in Vegas because you couldn't leave the country. The FBI agent Campbell explained, Mr. Parker, you have 2 choices. Deportation to Holland where murder charges await, or you sign over all rights to Elvis's contracts, music and earnings, and disappear forever. Parker knew he was beaten. In Holland, he'd faced trial for the murder he'd fled in 1929. In America, he'd faced decades in prison. What about my debts? That's the beautiful part, Elvis said. Nick here isn't really mob. He's FBI undercover. Your $7 million debt, it never existed. We created it. Every loss you had tonight was staged. You've been playing with marked cards and federal agents. The revelation destroyed Parker. 20 years of controlling Elvis, gone. The fortune he'd stolen, seized. The power he'd wielded, evaporated. All because he'd gambled one too many times. But the casinos, my real debts. Oh, those are real, Campbell said. About $2 million to various Vegas casinos, which you'll pay back with the money you've hidden in Dutch accounts. Yeah, we know about those too. Elvis pulled out a document. Sign this, Colonel. Complete release of all contracts. Admission of financial fraud. Agreement to never contact me again. Parker's hand shook as he signed. With that signature, 20 years of exploitation ended. But Elvis wasn't done. You know what the saddest part is, Colonel? If you'd just been honest, we'd both be rich. But you had to gamble, had to steal, had to control. You turned me into a prisoner in Vegas because you were a prisoner of your own lies. Parker was led away in handcuffs. As he passed Elvis, he stopped. I made you, boy. Without me, you'd still be driving a truck in Memphis. Maybe, but I'd be free, and I'd be happy, and my mama would still be alive because I wouldn't have been in Germany when she needed me. The colonel had no response. The man who'd controlled every aspect of Elvis's life for 2 decades was reduced to silence. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The FBI raided Parker's office, finding doctored contracts showing Parker taking 50% instead of agreed 25%. Side deals with casinos Parker never told Elvis about. $14 million skimmed over 20 years. Evidence Parker had sabotaged Elvis's movie career for quick Vegas cash. Proof Parker prevented Elvis from touring overseas because he couldn't get a passport. The real shock came from the Vegas casinos. Parker owed money to every major casino. $800,000 to the Hilton, $400,000 to the Dunes, $300,000 to the Sands, $500,000 to the Desert Inn. He'd been gambling away Elvis's money faster than Elvis could earn it. But the most damaging revelation? Parker had been selling Elvis's prescription drug problem to dealers. He'd give them Elvis's schedule, his preferences, his weaknesses, then take kickbacks from the drug sales. The colonel wasn't just stealing Elvis's money, he was actively feeding his addiction for profit. January 1975. Parker was deported. No trial, no prison. Just a one-way ticket to Holland and a lifetime ban from America. The murder charges in Holland had expired, but Parker was now a nobody in a country he'd fled 45 years earlier. Elvis was finally free. But freedom came with a cost. Without Parker's strict scheduling, Elvis had no structure. Without the Vegas imprisonment, he had no purpose. The freedom he'd craved for 20 years became another kind of prison. I spent so long fighting the colonel, I forgot what I was fighting for, Elvis told Red West. The FBI used Elvis's testimony to convict 3 casino executives of racketeering, but they kept Elvis's involvement secret, part of their deal. To the public, Parker simply retired to Holland for health reasons. Parker tried to contact Elvis multiple times from Holland, letters begging for forgiveness, For money, for another chance. Elvis burned them all except one, which he kept as a reminder. It read, "My boy, I made mistakes, but everything I did was to make you a star. Yes, I took too much. Yes, I gambled. But I loved you like a son. Without me there would be no Elvis Presley. We were partners. We were family. Please, I'm dying here alone. Send something, anything, your Colonel." Elvis wrote back once, "Colonel, you bet me like a poker chip. You sold me like a slave. You fed my demons while picking my pocket. You were never my family. You were my warden. Stay in Holland. Stay away. Die knowing you killed the thing you claim to love." EP. Parker died in 1997 in Holland, alone, broke, forgotten. His obituary mentioned managing Elvis briefly, but focused on his later years as a failed gambling addict who lost everything at cards. The man who'd controlled the king of rock and roll died as nobody, his ashes scattered in a country he'd spent his life running from. Elvis died in 1977, free from Parker but never free from what Parker had done to him. The drugs Parker had enabled killed him. The isolation Parker had created consumed him. The gilded cage was gone, but Elvis had forgotten how to fly. Red West revealed the full truth in 2010. That poker game was Elvis's greatest performance. He played Parker perfectly, acted devastated when he found out about the gambling, pretended shock at the debts, even fake cried when Parker was arrested. But Elvis had planned every second with the FBI. He knew exactly what cards would be dealt, when the agents would burst in, everything. Elvis didn't just beat Parker at poker, he beat him at his own con game. The real evidence of Parker's gambling destruction. After Parker was gone, Elvis's estate was valued at only $5 million. A man who'd earned over $100 million in his career had almost nothing. Parker had gambled away approximately $75 million of Elvis's earnings over 20 years. The cards Parker was holding when arrested are in the FBI museum. A worthless hand, 2 of clubs, 7 of diamonds, jack of hearts, 3 of spades, 9 of clubs, nothing, which is exactly what Parker was without Elvis. The poker table from that night is now in a private collection. The owner claims that on quiet nights, you can hear cards shuffling and a voice saying, "I'll bet you Elvis Presley," but that's probably just legend. The real horror is that it actually happened. A manager betting his client's life. A client setting up his manager. The FBI playing both sides, and in the middle, a rigged poker game that ended 2 decades of exploitation with a handful of worthless cards. The house always wins in Vegas. But that night, for once, Elvis beat the house by becoming it.